Australian music and how we consume it is going through a period of change. But are we as consumers and musicians keeping up with this? Hey everyone, Liam from Solitude here. Welcome back and thanks for clicking on this video. Today I want to speak about something that I think is very important, and that is change in the Australian music industry. Now, over the past 25 years or so, I would say that the way an Australian musician or artist has become popular has pretty much been the same. And I'm talking about alternative musicians that come up through underground and local music scenes. Basically, how you start out is you make music with your friends, you get together, play live shows, grow a local following and community, and hope that one day you'll gather enough attention to get played by Triple J, or if you're very lucky, a commercial radio station. But getting played by Triple J would then open the doors up to other options like festival spots at places like Big Day Out, Splendour in the Grass, as well as of course just growing a national audience because your music is getting played in every major city in Australia now on a very popular radio station. Although in the past 5 to 10 years, we have been seeing a transition away from this model. Triple J is still very popular in the grand scheme of things, but I don't think it's the most popular way of consuming music in Australia at all anymore. And radio in general, in fact, is a dying medium. It's quite clear now that streaming is the main way that most people consume music, especially young people. And this once tried and true method of getting played on Triple J to get an audience is no longer as necessary. Streaming services, in particular Spotify, is where you grow an audience now. Now, I recently started putting some questions up on the Triple J Reddit page for a couple of reasons, because I wanted to get a vibe of what people actually think and see if my thoughts and opinions line up with a majority, and also because I found that the Triple J Reddit page is basically the main spot that you can find discussion about Australian music. But I put some questions up about Triple J and where people are finding music now, and I've got some interesting results. So firstly, let's start with the question, how often do you listen to Triple J? Now, we've heard all the reports lately about how less people are listening to Triple J and the ratings are not good. But what does the subreddit say? Well, we can see with these results here that still it's a majority of people on that page who are listening at least a few times a week. And it's a very close second where people hardly ever listen and they just tune in on Hottest 100 Day. I feel like this is a pretty good reflection of where radio is at generally, where most people now are only ever listening when they go in their car and it just automatically starts playing. Now, the next question I've asked is, where do you find new Australian bands and musicians to listen to? And as you can see, the results here show that streaming services such as Spotify are the main place that people find new bands and artists to listen to now. Radio comes in second, which includes Triple J, of course, but it's almost half the amount of people who voted for that. And lastly, what is your opinion of Triple J? And this is the Triple J Reddit page, remember. We can see that the highest voted result was a negative one. Most people feel like it's getting worse or it's just not very good at all. Now, let me first point out that this idea of Triple J used to be good, it sucks now, the music that they put on now is terrible, has always been around. You gotta remember, Triple J is a station that is about 30 years old now, and every 5 to 10 years the next generation of young people who are the target audience come through, and every young person generation has their own niches and genres that they like. So yeah, of course 18-year-old guys who thought that Grinspoon and Silverchair was the greatest thing in 1998 are not going to think that the Kid Laroi is really good in 2021. But I think the criticism right now is very different, and the lowering ratings are a sign of that. You just got to remember that a lot of people are not tuning into radio anymore, especially young people. I think that Triple J are really struggling to keep up with this, and they're trying to go in a direction that's attracting young people who just aren't generally interested in what they're doing or the medium that they use to try and attract them. In my opinion, Triple J really needs to look hard at itself and inwardly come up with a plan to use its government funds to effectively attract the target audience that it has, which is young people. And how do young people consume music? Well, we just saw in the results of my questions that it seems that they get it on streaming services and broadly the internet. I've spoken about this a couple of times before on some of my other videos, but I think that Triple J really needs to consider becoming a media platform instead of a radio station. For example, the Triple J Like a Version segment that they put out on their YouTube channel every Friday is still excellent, and it really is the lifeblood of the station right now. They usually do attract a pretty good artist who does a pretty good live performance and cover every week, and sometimes those videos get millions and millions of views. I mean, let's take for example the Royal Otis video that came out only a couple of months before I made this video, which has gone extremely viral right now and is only doing great things for both Royal Otis and the Triple J brand. I'd like to think that they could make more and more of these and potentially look at making 2 or 3 Like a Versions a week instead of just 1. Can they also make more podcasts that they could put on their YouTube channel and social media accounts? I know they have some like ABC ones out there, but why not make like Triple J specific ones where they're interviewing artists that they think are relevant right now and talking to them about their stories? People consume podcasts a lot now, especially young people, a lot more than radio. And for up and coming artists, the aspiration of getting played on Triple J is not necessary anymore. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure Triple J won't play an artist unless you already have millions of streams on Spotify in the first place anyway. I'd even go as far as to say it feels like they're not discovering anyone new at all anymore, and it's really just streaming services pushing people ahead that Triple J eventually jump onto. I think I've said this before, but essentially all they can do for an Australian artist right now is just give you the cherry on top experience. I think essentially what I'm getting at is that if you are an up and coming artist, or if you're a fan of an artist that you would love to see become bigger, you don't need to worry about Triple J anymore. I would wholeheartedly be worrying about your streaming game. What playlists should you be getting on to try and get as many streams as possible, where you can get as many fans as possible? And a great place to start to look at as to where these bands are is what I've found lately, the Spotify charts local pulse. Now, I don't really know why not as many people are talking about these charts, but I personally think that they are better than the ARIA charts even, and I would love for Spotify to be putting a lot more effort into pushing them out there too, because they actually give you a very good view of what is getting played and streamed locally in your music scene, and you can see who the good up and coming artists are. Now let's check out these charts. I'll show you where you can find them. So if you search Spotify charts in Google, it'll take you to this page. And in the top right, you can click on the country that you want to look up. Here we'll go with Australia. And then it first shows you the flagship, but don't bother about this because it just basically shows what Taylor Swift song is biggest right now. Click on city and it will show you the local pulses. Now Spotify has chosen to make charts for Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney and Perth. So sorry to Adelaide and the other bigger cities around the country, you didn't make it. Now, if you click on, for example, the Perth Local Pulse box, it'll show you the songs that are charting the most at the moment. And I don't exactly know how these charts work, but what I'm assuming is that Spotify is showing you which songs are being streamed the most from Australian artists by people with Spotify accounts in the city that you've clicked on. So when we click on the Perth Local Pulse page, it's really cool because we can see local artists like South Summit, Rara Viper, Full Nelson, and so on being high up on the list and showing that locally these bands are getting a lot of streams. Scrolling all the way through is a nice, interesting look, and you can see, you know, your classic Australian artists that are getting played a lot, or bands that have just put out something new that are pumping up the list. If I was a local artist, I'd be aspiring to get on this list, and if I did get on that list, I would know that I'm doing something right as a musician. So ultimately, that's where I see the future of Australian music at the moment, on streaming. And as much as Spotify can be a pain sometimes and a little bit unethical towards its artists, it is a pretty good platform for musical discovery, and it pretty much is the monopoly of streaming. I mean, do you actually have any friends that use any of the other services out there? I can't think of anyone. Thanks for checking out this video, everyone. If you want to see more stuff about Australian music, please like and subscribe, and you'll see more soon.